Hey everybody, and welcome to the monthly live stream and giveaway announcement for Audio Advice. Today we are talking all about the new Motion Series from MartinLogan. So we're joined with both Gene and Alan from Audioholics and from MartinLogan.
Hey guys.
How's it going?
At the end of this video, we're going to be doing our giveaway, which is for the MartinLogan Motion XT F100 floor standing speakers. Spoiler alert, these things are absolutely awesome. So we are super stoked to give this away. And, for the rest of the hour, this is just going to be a Q&A session. So drop any questions that you got over in the comments. And we're going to be awarding a prize for the best question, which is going to be a swag pack from MartinLogan. And we're also throwing in a $100 gift card from Audio Advice. So super excited to have everybody here. So tell us where you're from and where you're chatting in. So to get things kicked off, we're going to go ahead and do introductions. So Alan, we'll start off by your introduction. We always like to do a fun little question. So we had our the worldwide release of these speakers at our showroom in Raleigh. So we got to hear a lot of demo tracks. So tell us kind of what your favorite demo was there.
Cool. Well, my name's Alan. I'm from MartinLogan. I'm the senior vice president, and we had a lot of fun at that event, and it was good hanging out with Gene and Nick and the entire Audio Advice crew. We played a lot of great demos at that particular event, but I would say probably my favorite was Think from Kalita. And that track, actually, a lot of people probably are familiar with because it was in one of the scenes from, the movies with, I'm drawing a blank now. John Wick, the second John Wick, I think it was, where they're in the bathhouse. They actually play that song, and it's a really great cut, but especially on the new Motion series. So.
Awesome. And I saw you had a drink before this. This is a happy hour, guys. So, Alan, what are you drinking on?
It is. Well, in fact, I'm a little bit of a bourbon guy. So I have I have a little bit of a Weller 12 here that I'm going to start to polish off here in a little while. So I figure good speakers, good bourbon, and good company, right? So
Awesome. And Gene, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, appreciate having you, being with this live stream. And Alan, it was awesome meeting you a few weeks ago. I don't think we've ever actually interfaced at a trade show or anything before.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
But that was such a great event, Nick. Let me tell you, every time you guys do something, it's done right? Like the Audio Advice live event last year, your first year running a trade show. And let me tell you, it was better than most professional trade shows I've been to that have established. So that was a great experience. And then doing this unveiling of the new MartinLogan Motion Series in your Raleigh showroom, blown away by the showroom. I mean, it brings me back to the days of, when I was in college and there were still hi-fi shops that you could go and go to the different rooms and demo. And I haven't had that experience in a couple of decades. And it just was a great experience, especially to get to hear these speakers in multiple venues. We heard the multi-channel venue with the F200s. I think it was a 5.2.6 speaker layout. There was 6 height channels. And then to hear the F100s in their own room with the STR. I love the Anthem STR. That was actually the integrated. I have the separates right behind here. That was just an amazing demo. The fact that it wasn't the flagship product and you guys were showcasing that as 2-channel, and the results that came out of that room with minimal acoustic treatments and minimal fussing. As far as I know, Alan, you didn't even apply Arc Genesis to that, right?
No, they were unarced, and we did that way intentionally because obviously, depending on the electronics customers have, they may or may not have the ability to arc, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, it was a really great show. We got a ton of positive feedback on it, and it was great. So awesome. Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm hosting today. My name is Nick, and I brought a little drink along as well. So I've got my anniversary MartinLogan glass, the 40th anniversary, maybe backwards on camera, but
awesome.
Drink a little Woodford in it. So we're all good on this side. So awesome. So Alan, I mentioned it a bit. So tell everybody about what we're giving away today.
Awesome. Well, you guys are giving away a beautiful pair of MartinLogan Motion F100s. These guys are definitely proven out to be the most popular floor standing in the line so far. They're very similar in size to those of us that remember the previous generation in the Motion 60 XTI. These are also the pair of speakers that we're demoing live at Audio Advice in the 2-channel room that you see there that Gene and I got to hang out in. So the very impressive product. You guys are going to, whoever wins these is going to be very lucky souls. So
I have a question for you, Nick. In that room, because I'm not too familiar with what you guys do in that room, was there acoustic treatments on the sidewalls, or was that just
Yeah.
fabric wrapped? Or what was that room
So I
about?
think there is acoustic treatment. That room's been done for a while. I'm not sure exactly what they have, and there is acoustically treated, but I just don't know to what extent. And that was, you know, to kind of go ahead and say that was probably my favorite demo at the entire show. Of course, the theater is always really impressive, but just to hear the 2-channel performance on those, being familiar with the prior line of the Motion series, it was just such a huge step up. And Gene and I were actually talking about this separately and saying that whenever I listened to it, I had to look to the side to see what, like, to make sure there wasn't a surround speaker there because the sound stage extended so far. So it was absolutely awesome.
I honestly, that's my impression too. When you guys put on, I think you put on something from an artist called Marcin Kashmir. It's like a flamenco guitarist interpretation of popular music like Led Zeppelin. But when I heard all of that information coming from the sides, I swore like maybe this is a trick, maybe this is a surround sound demo and you have invisible speakers. But in reality, when you really set up 2-channel right, and I've talked about this, I've done videos on this on Audioholics, when you have good symmetry with your sidewalls and you have a speaker that has really good imaging capability, not only do you get that anchored phantom center when you're sitting in between the speakers, but you get that soundstage that expands beyond the width of the speakers and the depth of the speakers. And that's what I was hearing. I was hearing so much spaciousness to the left and right of me, just like I get in my own acoustically treated room. That's why I was asking how good was this room, because I mean, it just sounded great. I know there wasn't any tone controls being employed, but the speaker sounded very balanced. So when we were listening to like Dominique Fils-Aimé, I always plug her because I'm really, I love her music and it's very audiophile.
And that cut sounded great too, the Bird's cut. Yeah.
It did. And there was no chestiness in her vocals. Sometimes when you do a close mic recording, you can hear too much pronunciation in the mid bass or the mid treble or in the mid range area. And the speakers just sounded really neutral. Like that's what I was really impressed by, because I've heard prior MartinLogan Motion Series and they were good speakers on their own, but these were definitely much more neutral sounding from what I've heard in the past.
Yeah, I kind of experienced the same thing when it came to the soundstage. I think it was, which we're talking about demo songs, it was Boz Scaggs' Thanks to You. And there's a lot of like kind of sparkle and like a lot of sound effects kind of in the upper register of that. And that was something you just hear totally extend past the speakers. And so I looked around, looked behind me. But awesome. So we got actually our first question in. We have quite a few questions flowing in, but we got our first one from I know, from Jeff Lemon. And so he says, do the folded ribbon tweeters on the MartinLogans tend to make the sound field wider? I know that you can go into the tweeter nomenclature there, but Alan, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny. It's kind of the opposite when it comes to a folded motion tweeter. We're actually trying to control the information that we're sending out into the room to try to limit the interaction of the environment that speakers are placed in. And we call that controlled dispersion. So previous generations of product with the folded motion tweeter, depending on the model, were anywhere from 80 by 80 to 80 by 30 on the XT models. The new generation with the waveguides that we've implemented as part of the new technology feature set of this, the new products, goes to 90 by 90. So it is slightly increased dispersion characteristics, which gives you a bigger sweet spot. But the reality is it's still very controlled, so it doesn't interact with the room as much. And that's great for a customer that has a challenging environment where you've got vaulted ceilings or glass walls and hardwood floors, because all of those things, unfortunately, impact the sound in a negative manner. So.
Yeah, and the 90-degree dispersion, that was, I love that you guys put a waveguide on there. And that was, because our theater tool, if you pull up the dispersion patterns on what our tool uses, it's all 90 degrees as well. And so it fits perfectly in there. For theater use, these things have had a ton of demand so far. And which there's something interesting on that question. So he talks about folded ribbon. And Gene, maybe you can kind of touch on this. I know that MartinLogan, you guys have the motion tweeter, which is more of like an AMT. So do you guys want to kind of discuss what the difference is between a folded ribbon and like an AMT?
Well, I think that's an Alan question because he's the expert at making these kind of speakers. I mean, I can give you
the easiest way to describe it is the description of the technology itself. When you look at, and our website obviously has some better images that you can take a look at, but a folded ribbon or the folded diaphragm that we utilize is exactly that. It's folded like an accordion with the magnets placed behind it. And the nice thing about it is it decreases the size physically of the driver, but it still has the same amount of capability of moving air. And so when you look at like the 1 inch by 1 inch version that we utilize in the regular Motion Series product, that when you pull it out is about 6.5 inches in length. So there's a lot of air being moved in the very small surface area of that actual tweeter itself. And one of the comments that we get from end users and listeners of the product itself is that they sound considerably larger than they actually are. And that's really why. Whereas other technologies are using just a flat single diaphragm, including like our electrostatic speakers, where you just see a single panel that's not folded. So it gives us basically the ability to move more air in a smaller surface area. So,
and you know, Alan, what I find interesting about that is I've been following this whole AMT. I call it an AMT movement, right? Because
right, yeah,
transitioning to that. But I'm talking 10, 15 years ago when the first generation of AMTs came out. The biggest problem with those drivers is they didn't have dynamic range.
Sure.
They just couldn't play loud, and they couldn't play low enough, so the crossover had to be higher. But now we're seeing the opposite. Now we're seeing these AMT tweeters. The technology has evolved so much that you get more dynamic range out of a good AMT than you would out of a 1 inch soft dome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did see it late in the 2000s. You saw a couple of companies adopt the technology. We were, of course, one of those, but it's changed considerably when you go from our original Motion Series, which launched in the 2009-2010 timeframe, to this being our 4th generation of product that you see behind me. And somebody asked me earlier, are these actually real? Yes, they are. They're not just a Photoshop background there. So.
So
Awesome.
One last question. I have one question on the AMT, and then I found another question I think we should go over, Nick. The diaphragm material that's on the AMT, is that a Mylar or is that an aluminum?
It's an aluminum etched Mylar.
See, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really good. There's heat dissipation advantages to that as well. Yeah, that's why it's another reason why this thing can play so loud and clean, is it's not compressing from thermal heat.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, there's a lot of activity.
I know that. This was one that I picked out on here. So they were asking about the port on here. So it appears that the F100 has a port on the bottom. Why would you prefer this over a rear or front port?
That's a great question. So if you look at the previous generation of product that we did, they did utilize rear port designs. It was one of the changes that we implemented in this current generation that we've started shipping recently. So it's actually on the F10, the F20, the F100, and the F200. We call it single cannon and dual cannon base ports that all port out of the base of the cabinet itself. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is reinforcement from the floor, but more importantly, it's about placement flexibility. So when you put a port on the rear of a cabinet and you end up having to push it closer and closer to the wall, like unfortunately some people do in their living environments, you start to impact that low frequency response fairly dramatically. If we put it on the base of the cabinet underneath, it now gives us the capability of putting it closer to the wall if needed with less impact to that low frequency response. One of the reasons we were able to do this too was the new feet design that we're actually utilizing on the product. You'll see what we call the fast outrigger feet. They're adjustable easily from the top of the units themselves, but they also space the cabinet ever so slightly off the floor, allowing us to port it out the base of the cabinet. So,
and then the other one advantage of having a port on the bottom, I think this is an advantage because I've heard this firsthand on speakers, especially when they're at their limits, is it acts like a low pass filter. So if there's any kind of chuffing or noise coming out of the port, you don't hear it as much when it's firing from the floor as opposed to the front or the back of the cabinet. Have you experienced that as well, Alan? We
certainly can. Some of that has to do with port tuning and flaring, but absolutely, it does make a difference. So it's there's multiple things in these new products that obviously have made a pretty big impact from the listening experience that are different. And the low frequency response is pretty dramatic as well. I mean, one of the things that we did, aside from redesigning the woofers themselves, was also add a woofer in each of the floor standing towers that we produce. And they're all active as well. That's another key note in this, is that, there's a lot of companies out there that are using passive radiators, but in all of our floor standing models, every single driver in there is an active driver. So,
and they're close to the floor too.
That's correct. That's another key point, is low mounted base drivers. So in addition to the floor bounce compensation that we utilize, it's basically moving those woofers as close to the bottom of the cabinet as possible, which gives us that floor reinforcement, which increases the low frequency output as well. So
yeah.
Yeah, I love the feet that you guys put on there. That was I didn't notice it until you were boxing them up. I mean, I saw them, but they were super adjustable, and I
Yeah.
haven't seen many people do that before. And so I thought that it was like an isolation foot, but those are just for adjustability. They don't have any isolation properties, right?
There is a little bit of isolation there. They're not quite as good as some of the aftermarket alternatives that you can find necessarily, but they're really, really nice. And the adjustability was really our key focus, and the ability to both mount them with rubber points or spikes as well, depending on the application. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we got another one. So jump into a different product. A question from Jay Mikeyej. Not sure, maybe Michael, but can we talk about the MP10 as an Atmos speaker? So this was a really interesting product whenever I saw it, because it's flexible, but I'll let you discuss it.
Yeah, so when we were going back to the drawing board with this series, we wanted to kind of think outside of the box. And obviously, in our previous generation, we had dipolar, surround speakers, and that application has changed over the years. And so we started looking at, okay, well, what can we do that really kind of gives a customer the ability to address multiple applications in a single speaker? And that's where the MP10 comes into play. So multi-purpose Model 10 is really what that refers to. And that speaker can act as multiple different products. It can act as a very small slim mount bookshelf, and it sounds very, very good as that, by the way. But it can also be used as a rear effects or a front heights channel. And you can mount it both straight facing the listening position, depending on your environment, or you can turn it upside down and it actual angles down from the ceiling towards the listening position as well. So that was kind of the concept there. It does come with brackets in the box, and believe it or not, it's kind of hard to tell when you actually look at it, but it actually is a ported enclosure. It's a very ingenious design port that we utilize, kind of similar to a product that we currently do called the Motion 4i as well. So
yeah, no, that was a really cool speaker, and the option to mount it either going straight or going down is it's awesome. So we definitely loved those. So yeah,
and one of the questions on one, there was one about the Nomex on the driver, and I can't find it now.
They're going so fast.
I can't find it.
I know these questions are running through.
They're way faster than we are.
Yeah, hey, Alan,
can you ask Gene if he has bench pressed the XT F100s?
We don't have any samples of it, thankfully. I don't want to lift
that. And Alan, so tell us. We used the MP10s in the theater at the unveiling of these. So tell us a bit about what that setup was. Just kind of break that down so everybody can. And if anyone's in Raleigh, we still have that set up in our showroom. So just kind of go through this a bit.
And this system sounded really amazing. Obviously, here we're using a pair of MP10s. I think those are actually satin black. It's hard to tell from high gloss black in the image. Is front effect channels, and then we had 4 in the rear as well with this application. This was a great sounding theater, by the way, guys. Like, the room was really good. There was a lot of great demos coming out of it. And this was where our friend Andrew from our product development team was actually stationed throughout the day as well. So.
Mm-hmm. And because what amplifier were you using on the front? That was the MCA 325, is that right?
On that system, I don't remember. I didn't actually set that one up. We'd have to actually ask Andrew. He was using the Anthem AVR.
I think they were using the MRX 1140 along with
with
the MCA 325. So those were getting 225 watts. And we've had a few questions I think come through this. So what do you think the appropriate amount of power is for like the F100s and the F200s?
So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of different products out there that'll work well with these. We've mentioned Anthem, and obviously the Anthem Integrated worked really well at the event that we did in Raleigh. That was the STR Integrate, that is. Like Gene, I have a pair of the Anthem STR separates in my home, and I've got them powering. In fact, this F200 behind me here doesn't normally sit there. It's usually in my living area next to my expressions, but it sounds really phenomenal on the Anthem STR amp and preamp. But beyond that, there's a lot of great other electronics that we work with. I mean, when we're developing our all of our models, not just with the folded motion whip, but the electrostats as well. We're really flexible on using pretty much any brand out there, from Parasound to Macintosh to, Yamahas and Denons and Marantzas for receivers, because we know that our customers have a lot of different brands out there they enjoy. And that's just a couple of them, by the way. I don't want people to think that I'm leaving somebody out necessarily, but we want the customer to be able to be flexible in whatever electronics they want to use. The best thing is just making sure that it's a good quality product that you're utilizing.
And I would like to say that if you're getting a pair of the F100s or F200 towers and you're using an AVR like the MRX 1140, which is a great receiver, I love the Arc Genesis on it, I love the processing, but it's more suited towards 8-ohm speakers. So if you're going to spend this kind of money on such an incredible speaker, I would at least get a 2-channel amp, one that can give you almost double power at 4 ohms, because you're going to get that much more out of a speaker like this, because this speaker plays loud, it plays low, it's got real bass extension, unlike some towers that pretend to have bass extension just because they're big. I mean, I was actually hearing real bass out of these speakers. So definitely, even a monolith amplifier.
Well, I think that the Anthems have been absolutely phenomenal with these, because I mean, if you're doing a front stage as floor standing speaker, having 225 watts sounded amazing. And on top of that, the dynamics, like you were talking about with the bass that we were getting out of these speakers, it's another question we get a lot is like, for 2-channel use. Actually, we did have a question on here that was about when designing a new series, was there a focus on movies or music or both? And so I guess this kind of comes back to the the question almost of low end. So do you think these have enough low end to kind of play 2-channel on their own? Would you need to add a sub? Kind of what are your takes on this?
Sure. So in the development process, we do look at both aspects of the use case for the customer, because we know that people are going to use them in all applications. I would say early on in the development, we do tend to focus on 2-channel listening because there's a lot more detail there. It tends to be a little bit more focused for us. But as the development proceeds, obviously theater applications are a huge portion of what most of our customers are utilizing as well. So we want them to be able to use it in any application necessary. Obviously, if a speaker can do really well in producing good quality 2-channel music, it's also going to do exceptional in a movie as well. So
yeah, and that's not necessarily the case. If you have a speaker that's okay for home theater, it might not be good for music. So but if it's good for music, it's
correct.
For home theater.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why typically we'll start on the 2-channel side of things.
Yeah, and would you use a subwoofer with most of your floor standing speakers, or do you think you would kind of keep them as is?
Boy, it just depends, right? I mean, like Gene said, the low frequency output of the F100s and 200s in particular is pretty exceptional. Now, obviously, I think the 3 dB down point in the 200, we're measuring in at 27 hertz or something like that, depending on the environment. But at the same time, obviously a sub that can dedicate itself into that range can certainly help as well. But they do really well standalone.
The correct answer, Nick, is always add subs.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to have good bass for every seat. I mean, you can get a 2-channel system, but once you stick the speakers out in the room, you got SBIR issues you got to deal with. They're impossible to get around unless you put subs towards the front of the room against the walls. So if it's a problem, or if you just have one sweet spot and the bass sounds great, these speakers definitely have enough extension. But if you have multi-row seats and you want to listen to 2-channel music and you want consistent bass all around, obviously a couple of subs would really help that out.
If you have to ask, it's probably best to go ahead and get the sub too.
That's what we pretty much tell everybody. A subwoofer, especially like Gene said, if you're trying to appease everybody in a room, you definitely want that one sweet spot. You can make it work, but yeah, it's a lot easier that way. But we got another interesting question from William here. So what are the enhancements or changes to the cabinetry in these that improve the performance? Because that's a piece that not many people talk about as a cabinet difference.
Absolutely. So if you have the ability to feel them side by side, there's obviously pretty vast differences from everything from the weight, but the internal bracing changed dramatically on this next generation of product that you see. The easiest way to test that is the knock test, where you can simply walk up to the top of the cabinet and actually tap the top of it and feel how solid and rigid the cabinet design is. The previous generation was a great product, but this actually takes that to the next level. We wanted to make sure that it was taking that step a bit further from a cabinet design. So.
And so generally speaking, how does cabinet design impact the end sound?
So at the end of the day, the cabinet can start to colorize the sound, because obviously you have moving drivers here that as the drivers move, they can vibrate the cabinet. So the better the cabinet is built and the more solid it's built, the less that's going to translate into the actual music itself. So the more solid the cabinet is, typically the better performance you'll get out of a product. So.
Do you know how thick the front baffle is on those cabinets?
Well,
you have that kind of piece over.
That's kind of deceiving, because there's actually the baffle here, which we call the slab, that actually is removable, and the actual front, that's the baffle of the speaker itself, is 3/4 inch MDF. So
right. I found another question, mate, you want to feature here.
Yeah, what you got?
Okay. With the inclusion of the waveguide, do the speakers need to be towed in?
I like that question.
Actually, well, they would need to be towed in a little bit less, honestly. But again, some of that's going to be room dependent. But I would say you can actually tow them out a little bit more, slightly more than the previous generations, because of the waveguide. But a lot of that is going to be playing with the speakers once you get them into the room. In my situation, in my living environment, I actually found maybe a couple of degrees towards the out instead of what it was previously with the other Motion Series products. So.
Now, would you say that side information that Nick and I were hearing, the spatiality of the speaker, was that largely attributed to the waveguide in this speaker that you didn't have in prior generations?
I would say that you probably would have experienced something similar. Again, the dispersion characteristic only changed about 10 degrees to 15 degrees on the XT model, so it wasn't huge. But certainly it could have had some of that impact in that environment. So. Yeah, it does some magical things, that's for sure. So.
Yeah. So another cool question we got. So somebody was asking, can we talk about the upgrades to the Motion Series, the architectural? So basically how the architectural and the new Motion Series are going to blend together. So a lot of people do, a front, left, right, and center. Sure. That's going to be freestanding or behind an acoustically transparent screen. And they want to match this with the architectural series. So how do those blend up?
So interestingly enough, when we were in development of these products, if you go back a little bit into the third generation of the Motion product, which was the 60 XTIs, the 40Is that we just moved away from, when we launched that series, it was kind of a mid-cycle refresh. It wasn't a complete redo. It was basically updating the previous series. And part of the reason we had to do that was because we were currently in development of an entirely new CI line, which is the current stuff that we ship now, like the MC6 and the XTs and stuff like that. The technology that we utilized in that series of products, the current CI product, is actually translated into the new Motion Series product as well. So we knew that we were developing this next generation of floor standings and bookshelves and center channels. So we actually took some of that development and applied it here. So interestingly enough, the CI line actually translated into the floor standing line, which in a lot of companies, it's the reverse. So you'll notice, like, one example is the cone materials in the Motion Series, where we use the fiberglass woven cones. That is the same cone design that we use in the Motion Series and the CI, and the same thing with the XT with the Nomex backing and the Kevlar cones. So they're basically exactly the same. They're just CI application versus bookshelf or floor standing. So,
oh, very cool.
So this might be the most important question yet. And Nick, I think this is a question that you can answer. Is there an opinion as to which bourbon has the best impact on listening experience on these speakers?
So it's a fine balance of how much to the quality of bourbon. So it's an advanced formula that I don't know if I have a whiteboard, but it's going to be a bell curve, essentially, and partially quality. So don't know if I can answer it, but I don't know. Alan, what's your opinion on that one?
Boy, I'll tell you, I have listened to a lot of MartinLogans over the years with a lot of bourbon. I have a lot of favorites. I'm an Eagle Rare guy. I love me some Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel, anything Weller, anything from the Buffalo Trace family, essentially. So I don't know that I could say that any one in particular, but I will say the Weller 12 does sound pretty good with the Motion stuff as well. So.
You just got to make sure if you pile up multiple glasses, they're separated so they don't clink together. So
right,
that's,
exactly.
That's the key there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, going back to a prior question that we had, so you mentioned an active woofer. So somebody, they were asking, do you mean that's a powered speaker? So kind of explain that.
Sure. So an active woofer basically means that it is actually connected to the amplifier that you're using on the outside. So the difference is a passive radiator essentially might look like a cone, like you, I don't know how well you can see right here. But I'm pointing to the cone here. In some cases, they'll use a passive radiator here, which doesn't have a motor structure in it. All of the woofers that you see in our floor standing speakers have an active motor structure there, and they are connected to the amplifier that you're utilizing. So they are moving independently, and they actually are playing, versus a passive radiator that is basically just the surface of the cone, but it doesn't have a motor structure. So that's what I mean by active. And no, to answer your question, none of these models have internal amplifiers built in. So,
got it. And which sub from your lineup do you think best matches with these overall, if they are looking for a powered sub?
The Dynamo family does really well with the Motion Series product. Depending on the room size, the 1100X and the 800X tend to be the two most popular models in the lineup, and they also do have the ability to arc as well. And so I would probably suggest in many applications one of those two models, the 800X or the 1100 in particular. If you have a larger room, going to the 1600 is probably not a bad idea. So.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say the Balance Force. Those are still some of my favorite subwoofers.
I know they're getting a little older. I'm not writing it off. I was just saying that.
Oh, I know.
For this application, it's, but the Balance Force obviously is a completely different animal as well. So.
Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite subwoofers. It's getting a little older now, but I love it so much. Yeah, cool. So I'm looking through some questions here. You guys see any questions that you want to jump to?
I have one. It deals with comparing products, and I think I have a reasonable opinion on this, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
This one's saying, Gene or Nick, I want to put spotlight. Since Audioholics and Audioholics has reviewed the Polk R700s, how would you compare the Motion F100s? First, they're in completely different price classes, right? I mean, the Polk Reserve series, I think they're under $2,000 a pair. So the Motion 100, the F100s are about $5,000 a pair, or $5,500 a pair.
The F100s are $4,500 retail.
Okay, so you're looking at basically double the price. And my opinion on that is, you're not seeing diminishing returns at this level because both of these products are extremely high value products. The Polks are a meticulously engineered speaker. In their price class, they're one of the best from our experience. But the Motion F100s, obviously, they're double the price. They're going to play louder. They're going to dig deeper. And that AMT tweeter is just magic. So, I mean, if budget is not a concern, then the Motion is definitely the speaker I would choose. But if budget is more of a concern, then the Polk is still a great option. So you're looking at two legitimately well-designed speakers from different companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, both speakers are good. Like you said, it's a different price class. I mean, obviously, the F100s, from what I've heard so far, they're really great for their price point. There's not really many others at that price point, just in general, that at least from the product lines that we carry, there's not many in that price point exactly. But these are fantastic. So I've really enjoyed those. The
more compelling question on this is, how do the Motion F100s compare to the Paradigm Founders? That's what I want to know. I want to put a Founder 100 again.
See, I'm going to let you open that can, Gene.
Well, I think we at Audio Advice Live this coming up here, we'll talk about that more. But we maybe can get both there, and everybody can go and kind of make an opinion for themselves. So I think that would be.
I think we know some people. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we know some people. But awesome. So somebody asked, Jim the Stargazer asked, one question asked by me and multiple people: how close are they to the electrostats? Please highlight this question. So Jim, you're highlighted.
That's great, actually. So I'll start by saying this too, because we do get this question on occasion. Are you guys still going to build electrostatic loudspeakers? And I want to be very clear here that our heart is always in the electrostatic side of our company. That is what we were founded on. That's what we're known for. And if I'm being honest, in a lot of cases, most of the team and the family that I work with, that's where a huge part of our heart is, because there is something special about an electrostat. In fact, you can't see it right now, but I've got my Summit X's staring in front of me here that are off camera. And then I have my Expressions in the living room as well. But I will tell you this, from a performance perspective, there is a pretty amazing experience that can be had from a folded motion product without the entry price that you have with an electrostatic loudspeaker. So although I won't say that they are going to give you the same level of transparency and three-dimensional listening experience necessarily, they are exceptional for where they are from a price point. And that's really the point of the product. Electrostats are great at a lot of things, but they also have some disadvantages, not the least of which is the physical size constraints that you have to make a panel. There's also challenges in the manufacturing side of things. Folded motion eliminates a lot of those disadvantages, and it also allows you to take that technology that's very similar and put it into other applications like CI speakers, which we unfortunately couldn't use for electrostats, right? So.
Yeah, I remember Gene at the Audio Advice Live last year. He was saying that the Neoliths were one of his dream speakers. Isn't that right, Gene?
Mesmerizing.
And that dream sticks with a lot of us. The Neolith and the CLX are probably, if you polled most of the team here at Martin Logan, they would pretty much tell you that those are our two favorite speakers, period. So.
Well, what blew me away about the Neoliths is I've heard them many times. I actually went out to Lawrence and did demos there years ago. But when you guys set it up at Audio Advice, it was in this big room on the side, and they were pulled out maybe 6 feet from the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And the bass was incredible. I mean, everything sounded great. And I asked them, I go, did you guys run ARC? And they're like, they basically said they did nothing. They just literally set them up in the room. They just found the right positioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we listened to Niles, that guitarist. I forgot his
Niels
name.
Lofgren, yeah.
Yeah. He's like the guitarist for Bruce Springsteen or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was a live recording, and it just felt like I was there. It was like in surround sound just from those two speakers. And every time I listen to the Neoliths, it's almost a religious experience for an audiophile.
Yeah,
they're fantastic. And that room was really, so you would look at the room and you would think the room was going to be bad. It had this big thing of windows on the side, brick, hard surfaces, but it actually was one of the best sounding rooms there. It was really funky. It sounded awesome. So we listened to those, and that brings up an interesting point. Do you guys think that electrostatics are less room dependent than a traditional box and cabinet speaker?
Did you want to go, Gene, or you want me to go with that one?
You have more experience, because I don't have a lot of experience in my own place with electrostats. So definitely you go.
So, the thing with electrostats, a lot like what we talked about with the Motion Series, is going back to controlled dispersion. And electrostats kind of take that even further to the next level. When you look at one of our panels, there's actually a slight bend in the panel itself. It's a curve. It's one of our patents that we have. And that's a 30-degree bend. So essentially what that means is the dispersion characteristic of the panel is 30 degrees into the listening environment. So it's very focused into the area where you're listening and trying to eliminate everything else in the environment as possible. And that's really the key. So if you listen to an electrostatic panel, if you have a very challenging environment where I'm talking in fact, that room, now I unfortunately did not attend Audio Advice Live this past year. I will be this year. But I did see the photos of the room, and it was a nightmare in a lot of ways, right? But that's where controlled dispersion comes in. And the reality is most of our customers out there don't have a prepped room or a room that's built specifically for audio. And that's where electrostatics shine, because they're focusing that energy where it's most important, where the customer's actually experiencing their music or movies. So.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome answer. So another funny question on here. So somebody says, you always hear demos with jazz music like Norah Jones. How do these bad boys sound when you want to bang your head and listen to some heavy metal? So this is something that I always try to tell people. Yes, everybody has their demo song that they use that's kind of reliable, but recreation of sound is recreation of sound. At the end of the day, it's going to sound good.
I can tell you this, and I'm not trying to not say people like Norah Jones are not amazing, and I do listen to jazz music on occasionally, but 90% of the time, my personal systems, that's not my listening habits. I'm a massive Tool fan, for example. So if you're talking about heavy metal and Metallica and bands like that, and so I'll never forget a buddy of mine took a day off specifically when Fear Inoculum came out. We sat on the couch, listened to Bourbon, and did nothing but beginning to end on the Fear Inoculum album Through My Expressions. And it's an amazing experience. So at the end of the day, like Nick was saying, it's about the experience. We want our speakers to be able to do whatever it is the customer enjoys listening to. So, and by the way, our music playlist in the factory during development is all across the board. There might even be some weird like Justin Bieber or something on there. So.
Well, I think that you guys were one of the first that I actually heard somebody demo 9 Inch Nails.
Yes.
And I was like, because we were going from all these others that were just, very buttoned up music. Nothing's wrong with that. I do happen to have a sign that says "No Hotel California" above my listening area. So you can tell I like to pick out funky stuff. But y'all's playlist is really good. So if anybody on here has Qobuz, there's a lot of like partnered playlists. So we actually have one for Audio Advice, and so does MartinLogan. And so, and Gene, do you have one on Qobuz yet?
I don't really use Qobuz a lot. I use mostly Apple Music and Tidal.
Yeah. Well, Qobuz is
one other demo you might want to check out since you're a Tool fan is I heard the song "Chocolate Chip Trip."
Oh yeah, that's on Fear Inoculum, correct? Yes.
Oh, that's on the new album.
It's actually, so like Nick was saying, we actually have 2 playlists on Qobuz. One of them is just a MartinLogan playlist, but we developed a second one, and this is coming from all of our team's feedback because we have a lot of people in the field constantly demoing, and we basically went out and said, okay guys, what are you playing on the Motion product right now? And it's, I don't know, probably 50 tracks or so that are on there. That is all team selected. So if you go to Qobuz and do a search for MartinLogan Motion, you'll find the playlist on there. So
last plug for a good demo. I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan. He's one of my favorite artists of all time, especially his work with Genesis. But he released an album back, I think, in 2011 called New Blood. And he took all of his classic songs, like from the album Security, which I think is his best work, like Rhythm of the Heat, and he redid it with orchestration, and you have to hear that in two channel or even upmix with the Dolby Surround upmixer. It's incredible sounding.
What was the album called?
It's called New Blood.
I'm going to add it to my
it's got the Rhythm of the Heat, it's got San Jacinto, it's got Intruder, Digging in the Dirt, Signal the Noise. It's got like 15 songs.
Yeah.
You just go from start to finish. I mean, you don't even skip.
I will. I'll add it now. Actually, boom, perfect.
Yep.
Gotta love technology, right?
I know, and that's what we go to these shows. And if I don't want to ask somebody, I'm going through Shazam and, and holding it up and just praying that it goes.
Yeah. Shazam is one of the most amazing show apps ever, right?
I've got a shortcut if on my drop-down menu. So like where you go down and adjust your brightness, I go on there. I just smack Shazam.
That's smart because I can never find my Shazam on my phone, and it's too late. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, it's over. The song's over.
Yep. Instead of just swallowing my pride and asking somebody what it is, I'm like, I don't know this song. Let's see. So Javi or Javi asked, is there a benefit to having the bass drivers further apart from the mid-range and tweeter?
Not that I'm aware of specifically. I don't think there's a reason why in the design that we specifically do that, because if you look in some of our earlier models, the bass drivers were actually higher and closer to the mid-range. There could be some cancellation issues, but obviously they're crossed over at different frequencies, so that shouldn't be much of an issue as well. So no, not that I'm aware of.
Gotcha. So let's see.
I see some Tool fans commenting
on that. You're not going to get a lobing effect. So,
say that again, Gene.
If they're crossed over low enough, the bass drivers, you're not going to get a lobing problem if they're separated further from the mid-range.
Gotcha. So let's see. I know there's a couple quick fires on here. Do you guys have what the cabinet material is? So I know that somebody was asking this after we talked about the construction of the cabinet. Is it MDF with? MDF. Is that a real veneer on the outside? I assume?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Awesome.
It's a real veneer with MDF. And then, I say the walnut is a real veneer, and then obviously they're painted finishes on the satin white as well as the gloss black. So grills are included in the box, by the way. I didn't mention this earlier, but we use a nice little secure lock grill so you can actually remove it. There's no magnets, and it kind of snaps into place. So it makes this really well finished in appearance. And every single model has slightly different trim rings and logo colors on it. But walnut's actually turned out to be one of the most popular finishes for us right now, believe it or not. So,
So I got a question I want to put here for any of the tech heads. This probably came from our channel, not yours. We'd love to know the frequency response, directivity index, power handling, short, long SPL, nerd info. So I don't know if you guys have that. If you do have it, great. Please send it to us because Matthew Pose has in the F100s, and he's going to be doing CEA 2034 measurements on this. He's going to take it outside and do all these kind of measurements. So it'd be great if we had your measurements to do correlation between them as well.
Yeah, I think we can send you that information, Gene, for sure. So.
Yeah,
Alan, you don't know that off the top of your head by chance for every model?
Well, I mean, obviously frequency response is going to vary by model. Like I said, we can go as low as 27 hertz and up to 20K with the tweeter, obviously. And power handling, of course, varies by model as well. Sensitivity wise, they're all 92 to 93 dB. So they use power wisely. But yeah, not off the top of my head, not all of it.
So maybe just, Alan, just briefly talk about the facility that you guys have to develop these products.
Sure.
I don't think maybe some of the users here don't understand how equipped MartinLogan and Paradigm are.
Sure.
When you design speakers.
So, MartinLogan is obviously a fairly small organization. We started in 1983. Our hometown is in Lawrence, Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. And that is where our entire product development and engineering facility is. We are separate entities from Paradigm. I do want to make that clear. They're our sister company. We share an ownership family. But the technologies that we utilize, the materials, all of that stuff is completely different. And it's a completely different product development team. And so from our perspective, when we're developing a product, it's all from what we want to do as a brand, right? The one thing we do utilize, which is great from our relationship with Paradigm, is the anechoic chambers that they have in our Mississauga, Ontario facility. And the products that you see behind me were some of the first that we actually utilized as part of that in the development of these. So, but other than that, everything's done in our Lawrence, Kansas facility, which is a cool little place. And we have a very passionate team. We love what we do, and I can't say enough about the family of people that I get to work with. So
awesome. Yeah, I've been out to the facility in Lawrence, Kansas. It's a lot of fun to go out there, and you guys have kind of the museum in the front of all the original Logan speakers. So it's really cool to go out.
We have the original panel that Gail built when he first had the idea of building stat panels. We have the pair of Arius that was in the Joey and Chandler's apartment and Friends, the actual pair that was there, all that stuff.
Oh, it's so funny. Somebody actually posted they posted a screenshot of that, and they said, does anybody know which speaker this is? And I was like, actually, this is one piece of Friends. I don't even watch Friends, but I was like, this is one piece of trivia I do know because it was in the factory that we went to. But so jumping on just to a couple another quick fire questions. So somebody was asking about the difference between like the FX, so the MartinLogan FX, which was that's a bipole speaker, right?
Correct. Yeah, dipole. Yeah.
Yeah, or dipole. Yeah. And so, what would be the advantage of using like the MP10 in like the current, I guess, Dolby Atmos object-based world that we live in?
Well, obviously nowadays that's what we want is we want something that's object based. And so going away from a dipolar surround really is the wave of the future here. So that's one of the reasons why we went to a product like the MP10, because most surround applications, we want to be able to pinpoint that. So the dipolar surrounds are pretty much, moving away at this point from the surround industry. So
yeah, that's what we've been noticing too, because when it comes down to object-based, you want it to be as locationally accurate as possible.
Absolutely.
And so that's where a lot of people want to do that. They think it's going to give more spaciousness to the sound, which technically it does, but really you want it to be locationally accurate if possible.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking through some more of these to see if we got any other.
They just keep coming.
I know.
We've got between our two channels, we've got almost 900 people on the live stream. That's
wow,
awesome.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well,
No, this is awesome. So let's see.
Everywhere too.
And everybody, we got a few more minutes to pop in questions before we pick the best question winner.
So I can't find the question that was in here, but Alan, you might want to just answer this real quickly. Someone asked why you have Nomex on the cone. I know it's a combination of Kevlar and Nomex, and my assumption is the Nomex stiffens the cone because Kevlar is strong, but it resonates and it needs a stiffening agent, right?
That's exactly right. It's a resonance that we try to eliminate from the Kevlar. So
takes out the coloration of the Kevlar, because a lot of the older Kevlar drivers had a distinct coloration you can hear in
Yeah, we don't want that. Obviously, we want it to be as accurate as possible. So the addition of the Nomex gives us that capability. So
Let's see other quick ones. A lot of compliments on the aesthetics of these speakers. You guys really did a great refresh. So I know the last you said like the mid-cycle refresh that you did was mostly aesthetic.
Yeah.
These you totally changed it up and they look amazing.
You know, it was one of the many things that we internally fought over, and little things like the colors of the trim rings and the grills and what grain we have and things of that nature. It's a lot of effort goes into it, and this was call it a 24-month project that we started and finished. So it's pretty awesome when you see something go from beginning to end, and be able to actually share it and the excitement. And when you talk to the team at MartinLogan and you talk to our dealers, the excitement's genuine because it's been a lot of work for us. So we're pretty proud.
Alan, real quick, do the towers have biamp capability?
Yes, they do. Yeah, absolutely. The binding posts on the back, the F100 and 200. I'm pretty sure the F10 and the F20 actually do too. I'd have to look to make sure, but I know the F100 and F200 do. And yes, confirm the F10 and F20 do have biamp capability. So
they're not just by wire; they're all biamp capability.
Yes, they have both binding posts on the back. Yes.
Okay.
The only ones, the B10 and the C10 center channel and the bookshelf do not, and the MP10 obviously, but the rest of the models do. So.
Awesome. Well, another question from James Smith. He says, would these be good in a room with minimal room treatments? I don't have the ability to make vast changes to the listening room. So maybe you can relate this back to the new design.
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with controlled dispersion. My living room is probably one of the worst case scenarios as well. It's a 23-foot high vaulted ceiling with hardwood floors, and they sound pretty phenomenal in that environment. Now, obviously, there are still limitations to that, but the fact that we're focusing that energy into the most important area where you're experiencing your music and movies, it's going to try to eliminate that room as best as possible. So again, electrostats are going to kind of take that slightly to the next level because they're more focused. But nonetheless, they're going to perform really well, even in some of the challenging environments. So.
But in a case when you can't do acoustical treatments in a room, try to do as much natural stuff as you can. Add mass to the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just adding a couple of couches can lower the RT60 decay time. Putting drapery over windows or over sliding glass doors. Florida has very common to have rooms with 15-foot sliders. So covering those would help. Getting bookcases on sidewalls or even behind the speakers, decorative wall treatments, that kind of stuff. All this stuff will give you some improvement. So don't just leave all these walls bare and untreated if you can avoid that.
Yeah, and most of that stuff doesn't cost a ton of money. You don't have to invest, huge dollars into making it sound incredible, like Gene said. So,
and there are acoustic treatments that are art. So
yeah.
Companies like Gig Acoustics, V Acoustics, I think.
Vi
Acoustics, yeah. So they offer things that are decorative. You don't just have to get the traditional ugly square panels.
Yeah, we actually have quite a few articles on acoustic treatment on our website. So if you guys ever go to the blog section, want to learn some stuff, but Vi Acoustics does have some of the more aesthetically pleasing rather than just a basic panel. But there's a lot of ways to integrate it. With a living room, that's the nice thing about having some sort of room treatment. Now, room treatment's really made to be the cherry on top, or not room treatment, basically, room correction is meant to be the cherry on top after room treatment's done. But, it should sound good anyway.
There you go for the whiskey. Brandon knows. Trust me, this guy is serious about drinking. So
that's awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, we're about to wrap everything up. So before we go, we kind of soft teased it before, but we're doing Audio Advice Live again this year. So it's going to be August 4th through 6th of this year, and it's going to be at the Sheraton Hotel in Raleigh. And so we are super excited. Last year was great. We had a fantastic turnout, and so this year, I think it's going to be even better. We know it's going to be even better. We don't think we've already got some big things in the planning. MartinLogan's going to be there, from what we understand, and hopefully Gene will come back. He was there last year, and so it was great. What did you think about last year's, Gene?
I loved it. I mean, it was one of the best trade show experiences I've had in years. It wasn't too big like a CEDIA or a CES, but it wasn't too small like one of the esoteric 2-channel shows. It had the right amount of 2-channel, right amount of home theater, and there were a lot of experts there, subject matter experts for various companies. So you got to meet some of the designers of loudspeaker companies, and I love that stuff when you can interact with the manufacturers.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really fun show, and we try to base it more of a consumer front. So a lot of these shows are industry based, and we try to make it based for the consumer and the people who are actually going to be buying these speakers. So, like I said, mark it on your calendar. There's going to be a lot more information coming about and some new updates. So great. Well, to go for our best question prize, I have Gary L. Thompson, and the question was about the porting on the bottom of the speakers. Love that question. So, Gary, we'll reach out to you with details there, and we'll send you over the swag pack with the Martin Logan glass and the Audio Advice gift card and the polo shirt. Almost forgot there.
Sweet.
And so I'm going to pull up our full giveaway winner. So if we can get a drum roll, please. Let's see.
I'm not very good at making drum roll sounds.
Oh. Nick, your camera's frozen for me. I hope it's
oh. We're doing a freeze frame. It's artistic. So the winner of the F100s is Mark Dybel, Dyble, in Novi, Michigan. So Mark will reach out with you, reach out to us, and we can get the shipment set up for those speakers. So congratulations. And we're also doing another giveaway next month. So good luck again, everybody.
Congratulations, Mark.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate everyone joining us here today. And like I said, if you guys have any existing questions on any of this stuff, feel free to reach out to our team via chat, phone, email, whatever works best for you. We'll find a way. And so, but otherwise, have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Bye, guys. Take care.
See ya.